what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Foot Candle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Foot Candle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. With me is Chris Fry. We are with the Foot Candle Film Society and the annual Foot Candle Film Festival. But today we're here on Foot Candle Films podcast to talk about other people's movies. So, Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I was surprised that Dev Patel chose a song from Let It Bleed, the Rolling Stones album, and Monkey Man as his first thing to focus on. But I mean,
it's a 2-hour exploration of that one song, which I thought was pretty impressive.
It's a lesser known song. You know, it's not as popular as You Can't Always Get What You Want or Give Me Shelter that's on that same album. But you know, you do you.
No, Dev Patel going on the deep cuts for us here. Yeah. So, and I'll actually hate to break this to you, Chris. It's actually very, very different from that tone of film. I'm hoping you watched the same film that I did. We will be discussing the latest film, as Chris alluded to, Monkey Man, which was written, directed, and starring Mr. Dev Patel. We will be reviewing that film. You did see that film, right, Chris? Is that sounding familiar?
When we take this quick
An
break,
anonymous young man unleashes a campaign
theater
of vengeance against the corrupt leaders who murdered his mother. Sounding familiar at all?
Maybe.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see when we get to the review. We will be reviewing that film, Monkey Man, here in just a moment. After that, Chris and I have some news and trailers to share about some upcoming film projects. One of them, I'll go ahead and tease a little bit, starring a Mr. Christian Bale, which always kind of interested to see projects he's involved in. Then a couple of trailers from mine and Chris's, definitely Chris's favorite studio, A24. Just so happens that seems to be all the stuff we tend to show, but we're maybe a little biased there, but that's what we've got is 2 more trailers of films coming out from Studio A24. And we'll be discussing those as well. I'm going to pass on Chris's recommendations this week. I know I was turning that into almost like a weekly thing. But, you know, we can only ask so much of Chris. Chris, you give a recommendation. You give of your heart and your soul every week to tell us about a film we should check out. I'm giving you a break this week because I feel like, you know, you just need a little bit of a breather. And we'll pick back up in the coming weeks with another recommendation, if that's okay.
Excellent. Yeah, I will admit I'm kind of knee-deep in festival submissions for the Foot Candle Film Festival. Yeah, yes. So I'm trying to plow through those. So it kind of gets hard to just do the general
Understood.
So thank you for the pass.
No, understood. All right, that's what we'll do this week. All right, Chris, let's go ahead and jump into our main review. And like we've said already, it is the film by director Dev Patel, Monkey Man.
Close your eyes and you will find yourself.
When I was a boy, my mother used to tell me a story of a demon king and his army. They brought fire and terror to the land until they faced the protector of the people, the white monkey.
Dev Patel made his cinematic debut with the Danny Boyle film Slumdog Millionaire. He's since gone on to star in many films, including The Personal History of David Copperfield, which Alan and I actually championed on a previous episode, The Green Knight, and 2 Wes Anderson shorts from last year, Poison, and the Academy Award-winning The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. With Monkey Man, we have Dev Patel's directorial debut, in which he also co-wrote and stars as an anonymous young man who unleashes a campaign of vengeance against the corrupt leaders who murdered his mother. What did you make of Mr. Dev Patel's debut, Alan?
Okay, so...
It's a family film.
Yeah. Full disclaimer, I'm afraid my review is going to be severely impacted by what I'm starting to suspect might be a technical problem with the screening I attended last night.
Oh,
No, I'm being very serious here.
Okay, now you mentioned this with one of the last ones.
Yeah.
It was a red tint.
Well,
or
red
something?
tune. That did not affect my review
Okay.
of Dune 2.
Dune
I
2
was
was the
able
one.
to
Right.
I was able to
Distance
still
that.
distance myself from any projection issues on that one.
Okay.
This one, in all seriousness, and if I am wrong and that there was not a technical problem with the film, then I actually have a much harsher review of the film.
Okay. Well, did you watch it in the same? I know you watched it at the same theater complex, but did you watch it in the same theater, like in the actual same like?
Oh no, it was
Dolby
a different.
theater. Okay.
No, it was
Okay.
a different theater. I don't think
Okay.
this was playing in the Dolby Cinema, was
okay.
it?
No,
Yeah,
I
it
don't
wasn't.
think it was. So okay.
So yeah, in my screening, I am of the sinking suspicion that the framing was off, where everything was actually tighter on the screen than what it was meant to be. Okay. Like,
Okay.
sometimes you can change the aspect ratio
Sure.
of like, and subtitles,
Flatter scope. And
subtitles are present on the screen, but they were like resting right along the bottom of the screen, which is normally to me kind of a dead giveaway of like, oh, that's something wrong. Now, if I'm wrong about that, and that's the way the film is actually framed and shot, okay, then I seriously had problems watching this movie because everything was so tight and chaotic in the editing, and it's just hard to follow. So I actually found myself really struggling to watch this film at times. So that's why I'm thinking, because I'm not seeing anybody else kind of giving that same critique online or other reviews. I'm thinking something was wrong with my screening.
Okay. I saw it at the same theater. I'm not sure if I actually saw it in the same, actual theater within the theater,
Yeah.
the movie theater complex. I don't recall that. I mean, I definitely have subtitles, but I don't remember them being like what you're describing. So it sounds
Subtitles were really close to the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
They never ran off the screen, but they were really close. And there's
Okay.
just way too many times there were close-ups or things where it was just uncomfortably close.
I think
And the
something
action was uncomfortably close, where it was very hard to follow in a lot of cases. I mean, I'm not saying that pulling back, if the framing had been a little better, that I would have been able to follow it even that much better, but it
Sure.
definitely had an impact.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there.
Hey, that's a
it
big
was a
disclaimer.
very tough viewing experience for me,
Okay.
where I really had a hard time watching the film.
Got you.
Okay.
I think it's from what I can get from what you're saying, I think it was a mistake. I think it is
Again, I did
problem.
after I made my own notes. I kind of like went online and tried to scour, see if anybody else was posting
Gotcha.
similar comments about the proximity of the framing.
It's like how it was shot.
Yeah,
So,
and
sure.
nobody else was making those comments. So I really think it might have been. And me and the 4 people in the theater with me, none of us had the gumption to like actually get up and go talk to somebody and say like, "Hey, is this right?" Because it feels really weird. It feels very bad. Because
Gotcha.
for about half the film, I'm just like, man, Dev Patel, I'm not happy with his
the way he's decided to do it.
whoever his cinematographer is or
Right.
whatever his directorial choices here with the way he framed his shots and looks, because it's just so tough to follow and watch. That about halfway through, I'm like, okay, I think something's wrong.
Okay.
So that needs to be a caveat over the whole thing.
Got you. Understood.
Beyond that, look, this is not my kind of movie.
When I saw the close fighting scenes and they the technique of biting each other's noses and the sound, I thought Alan's really going to be on board.
Yeah,
He
that's
likes
all.
body horror stuff.
I love
He
body
likes-
horror. That's my favorite thing ever. No, I get it. I mean, this is people have been alluding to John Wick and their comparisons with this. The film itself actually kind of makes a comment about John Wick itself.
There's a sympathetic with dogs.
Yes, there's a dog. And it's like, I get it. And it's John Wick, but with a kind of political socio commentary added in the mix, which I'm cool with that.
Right.
I am cool with a lot of the things that Monkey Man wanted to do. I'm not terribly cool with the way it decided to do them. If that makes sense.
Sure.
I like the ideas and I like the concepts introduced here in this film. And I like kind of what is trying to be said. I just didn't really care for the execution on many of the things I saw at all. For example, yes, I get, the story is, as I kind of teased at the beginning, it's a Young man who unleashes a campaign of vengeance against the corrupt leaders who murdered his mother, continued to systematically victimize the poor and powerless. That is obviously something very keen that Dev Patel wanted to dig into, is this whole idea of the marginalized people, the societies, especially in India, that are still suffering under a corrupt government, and, kind of feeling for those people who were the outcasts of society and were being put down by these other forces. Totally get it. And I totally admire the interest in wanting to explore that. But outside of a couple of scenes where there's commentary about that, it still even takes this whole population of those marginalized people who show up about halfway through the film and become part of the film, and they become just as bloodthirsty and violent as the Dev Patel kid character does, which I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't really quite win me over on your commentary here. So it's, again, the ideas and the concepts are good. It's the execution as how it went about doing it. I didn't feel like was great. Yeah, it is extremely violent. It was probably just a tad over the top for me, violence wise, than I felt like it needed to be to still serve as a good, strong film. So that made it a little uncomfortable at times, but, there's some good stuff here, but it's just, you kind of have to murk through. For me, I had to murk through a lot of the rest of the film to kind of find those little good moments and good things. And even any of the good moments I found myself questioning the way we got there or what's going to happen after that moment. So, it's really tough when a film wants you to see a lead character as one type of physical ability, and then thanks to a 5-minute, Rocky-ish type training montage, all of a sudden he is John Wick to the extreme, but then he still does something really just kind of dumb in the final battle that you're just like, okay, yeah, you're back to like the capability wise you were at the beginning. In other words, they had cool scenes that just took some poor execution and plotting to get to those moments and scenes. And that kind of lost me a while. So look, I'll go ahead and say I'm clouded by my screening experience. It was a tough watch for me. I honestly almost had to, like, at one point get up and like, I don't know if I can keep watching this film the way it's being portrayed. So I really think it was the theater projection. But that being said, I am anxious to hear your thoughts. Yours with a much better, cleaner screening experience. Sure. Maybe it helped with the perception of the film a little bit. Well, what did you think?
I would like to say that it did.
Okay.
But it sounds like, regardless, I think you and I are kind of on the same page.
Okay.
I like Dev Patel as an actor.
Yeah.
His acting in the film is not the problem for me.
It's good. Yeah.
I admire what you admired about it. They're trying to, it's like, okay, I'm making an action film, but in doing so, I do have a little bit of an agenda, something I'm trying to show, like this political situation and the class system or caste system, I guess you'd say, in India. And so it was like a slant with a purpose. And so, okay, all that cool. But at the end of the day, it did get a little muddy. And I think possibly I guess Dev Patel, it's a passion project. So if he'd have been writer, director, and maybe not acted in it, maybe it could have gelled a little better or something, like, because he has a little bit of distance and could have I don't know, or spent a little bit more time. For me, I have a very, middle school understanding of political situations in India. Like, I understand the caste system. I remember learning about that, but it seemed like, I think people, maybe in India, although I imagine Indian government probably is not going to be very hip on this film, but like, it would speak more to them and make more like sense to them. But I felt a little lost and kind of, and having the lower caste group of people suddenly become like fighting ninjas or whatever, I felt
that was
a bit of a stretch. I mean, granted, it's, the whole...
Oh, it looked cool. I mean, that's the thing, is that and that's again what I'm kind of coming to, is that there's a fight sequence in the latter stages of this film where you have Dev Patel, and he is in full John Wick mode at this point. I mean, he has now been like rebooted, and he is John Wick personified on screen. And it's actually, of all the sequences, that sequence I did actually enjoy the most visually, because I think it was just kind of a nicely paced action sequence in general. But you had this community of
I didn't understand his MacGyver fireworks at that point.
yeah, that was kind of interesting. I mean, it was unique, it was cool, but I don't really understand the effectiveness of it.
It
so.
didn't seem to be effective at
Right.
all. But
then out of nowhere, you have this group of people that he's befriended now earlier in the film that are very peace loving and just have been very supportive of him and trying to nurture him back to health. And all of a sudden now they are ninja killing machines as well. And I'm like, where did this come from? How do we even know that this was capable? But they're doing it in these really cool traditional garbs. And I'm like, yeah, it looked awesome,
Yeah.
but it just didn't make any sense. So, it was taking some really, really important themes and layering it into a film that was just extreme violence and brutality, and adding in some cool moments that, yeah, if you look at that moment individually, it is a cool moment, or it's a cool scene, or there's a cool visual imagery here, but it just didn't make the sense it needed to make to get there or to leave from that scene and continue on. So, yeah.
So I will say, I think you are definitely on the same page, but trying to highlight some things that we did like about the film, because we like to try to, highlight the positive. And,
Sure. Yeah.
steer
I've got a few too. Yeah.
So yeah, we both are on that page. You mentioned the training sequence. I kind of liked it because it was, it's this, I think maybe they're tabla drums. I don't know. But like this guy is like, basically he uses the
he's
rhythm of the drum.
Yeah. He's labeled as the tabla maestro.
Okay. So he uses these drums, and then Dev Patel's character kind of learns how to like hit a punching bag so that it's in rhythm. And because this is taking place in India, and that's a, traditional instrument from that area, I'm like, okay. And I think they kind of wink a little bit at the audience too, because it's like, the people admiring or like looking on and like cheering on it. So it's kind of like a Rocky montage.
Yeah.
But it's winking, and I'm like,
Sure.
okay, but you're spinning it from the area.
Yeah.
So
No, I liked, actually, that was one of my favorite parts. I thought the training montage was great.
Yes.
I just didn't buy the fact that after this montage, the ultimate fighting machine that he has now become, I'm like, all right, I don't buy that.
I got you.
But the training sequence itself and the use of the tabla drum as he was playing it and kind of working in some Indian, heritage and traditions into this training montage was really cool. I liked that a lot. Yeah, there are some sequences I really liked. It's just, again, you have to kind of question, okay, well, how does this lead into the rest of the story? How does this make sense with the bigger story we're seeing?
I'll say too, I was worried, but here again, I'm going to turn it into a positive. The whole, going in, I was like, okay, it's Dev Patel's version of John Wick in India. Mm-hmm. But there was more to it than that.
There was,
and
sure.
actually kind of, I guess you could say, maybe using the dog as something more than just a heartstring pulling device. It actually has I felt like a decent payout. I was like,
There's
okay,
a purpose to it, yeah.
You got me. I thought it was just going to be, okay,
Yeah.
here's sympathetic man with a dog. And but no, there was something there. A visual that I wish had been continued more, because I really liked the visual of it.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It was actually the Monkey Man mask.
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe it's because he didn't want to come off as too much of like a superhero, like a Batman, so nobody knows who Monkey Man is. But like, I actually it just was really weird and kind of disturbing. And then at one point, the appearance of the mask changes, and there's kind of like, okay, and you think that's just a good, but then it's almost immediately discarded after that.
I mean, it's so obviously a scene where he is approaching what's going to become his final battle area.
Right.
And he's wearing the mask. I'm like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is good. This is a take I like. And then as soon as he saw people he's approaching, he immediately took it off and threw it off and started punching and fighting. I'm like, well, okay, well, that was kind of pointless. Like, why go through this whole rebirth of this mask and the use of, because the mask is something he would wear when he was fighting in these kind of underground fighting contests early in the film, throwing a lot of these fights just for money. He would wear the Monkey Man mask. And also it's a kind of a connection to a traditional story of heritage of his I'm not sure if it's a religious story or if it's just more a historical
like a
story,
fable
a fable. But
sure.
basically he has kind of adopted this personality of this what's translated as Monkey Man.
Right.
No, I'm with you. That's another moment, Chris, where I'm like, there was a really cool idea and thing there, and it just wasn't executed right. It's like, yeah, the mask is great. How cool would it have been to actually see him wearing the mask during some of that final fighting sequence and like that be part of him? Like, that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
That would have been different and interesting, but it got discarded just as soon as we realized, nope, we need to see Dev Patel's face this whole time, and we don't need to have a superhero mask on. So, yeah, it was a little disappointing there as well. All right, what else do you have you have some positives?
I applaud the use of subtitles as much as they were. They were not bordering the bottom of the screen like apparently they were at yours. I wish, but I completely understand that the whole film could have just been subtitled. Because then it was like, I think it would just immersed me more in that world. But I understand, he's fortunate enough to get this movie made. It was his first effort. So he's like, okay, I can have subtitles, but I don't want the whole thing to be subtitled because American audiences may not go in for a subtitled John Wick, taking place in India. So I get it, but I just found myself, I was like, oh, when I saw him, I was like, oh, okay. And then I just kind of wished sometimes that they had just been used throughout the screen.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an American touch that I wish wasn't there. Another one I'll say, but I like the fact that they did try to bother using them. It worried me a little bit talking about American touches. Somebody to Love and Roxanne, I thought were kind of like pandering / pat song choices to use when he used them. But then they kind of went away from those and started to use mood music that was more India based. So I was like, okay, now granted, the Roxanne,
it was like dance club versions of the songs, which I thought fit.
Maybe.
Because, that's what other countries play. They do play American songs, in their own clubs. So I kind of like that. I thought it was cool. I kind of wish it had continued a little bit more, but anyway, that's fine.
But I feel like sometimes it was a little bit too shorthand for what they were also trying to communicate, because like, I think Roxanne, a little bit of that kind of hinted at the class system that he was trying to. So it was like, I don't know. I felt like, I don't know. American shorthand that I wish kind of wasn't there. But interestingly, I don't want to ruin anything about the ending of the film, but I do want to touch on it because there again, I think it's something that it was, there's a big fight, and the outcome of that fight, you do know what happens, but then ultimately, I think you kind of can question. There's a line that is said kind of like, it's a cycle. And in how the outcome of the final battle happens, the cycle seems like it's doomed to continue. And I thought there was some commentary there that maybe with a little tweaking on some writing or something could have been like a whoa type moment at the end of the film. And it didn't work. It didn't work. And so I don't want to spoil anything, but I thought, I was like,
You're talking about the final.
Correct. Cut to credits right afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like,
agreed.
Okay, so maybe I didn't know how I was supposed to take what I had just seen.
Yeah. There's obviously a message trying to be communicated with the way the last shot plays out.
Right.
But we're not quite sure what that is.
Right.
And that's, again, not a film has to spell out everything for us. I don't mind unambiguous.
No, but I think they were trying to give me a point.
Right.
And then I
that's
think
the thing is the film is trying to say something, but it kind of didn't quite figure out how to say it by the end.
Right. Yeah. It was like, I think they were trying to make, because they kind of, there's this conversation that's had as the battle is starting to go on about like keeping a cycle, you're creating this cycle. And then you're like, oh, interesting. There's like some philosophy. And then it's kind of jettisoned at the end. You're like, okay, so wait.
Yeah.
Are you trying to say that bore out or like, so I don't think that was their intention. I think I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah. I think the film had the right intentions. I think it had the right overall concept.
Okay.
I think in some moments and ideas that were trying to be shared in the film, I think were the right ones. It was just how to go from point to point, how to make those points visually and expressively on the screen didn't quite get there. And I felt like a lot of the plotting was, okay, we just have to get to this moment we want to have the super cool John Wick style fight sequence at the end where he's taking down, a horde of people pouring out of an elevator. Okay, but how do we get there when just 30 minutes ago in the film, he was getting his tail beat by random people and didn't really have the skills to do it? Okay, well, you gotta make me feel like we got to that point at the end to really let me buy it. And I just didn't buy it. And then on the same token, when you turn right around and you give me a quote final confrontation with somebody in a latter, very late stage of the film, after we've already seen him take down elevators full of people pouring out and took them all down, then you're wanting me to believe that he gets distracted by something just quick enough to allow somebody to hurt him in a way. I'm like, okay, that makes no sense with everything you just showed me in the last 15 minutes. So again, they knew what moments they wanted to hit in the film. It's just how they got there and what leaps of logic sometimes we had to take as an audience to get there didn't always work. And then I think the brutality and the violence was just a tad much for this story. I'm not saying that a film shouldn't have this kind of level of brutality. I think a film can, if that's the film it wants to make and the story it wants to tell. But again, we are ultimately, talking about, yes, you're going against the corruption and people who are perpetuating extreme violence in the political circles and people in power. I get it. And sometimes you have to match fire with fire. And I totally understand that idea, but I just feel like it was a little betraying to the character to go as almost over the top at times, violent as he did. You know what I'm saying? It was.
I do. And I think there's something to be said there. I kind of agree with you. It was over the top, but then I find myself questioning myself that if you're going to make a film like this and you're going to do an action film, is it better to make things seem cringy, make the violence seem real and like think people are affected and it's brutal as opposed to just kind of, people get shot and fall over and you don't see, but you know what I mean? Like, was he trying to actually make a point by making it really gruesome? I don't know. But
and I don't even think it was the fact that, you see so much blood and you see so much brutality there. I don't think that was the problem for me. It was almost the gleefulness of it at times. There's one scene in particular I can remember. It was in an elevator, and it involves
nose biting.
Well, there's lots of nose biting. I mean, really, take a drink every time there's a nose bite in this film because there's a lot. But there's actually in an elevator, there's a shot of a knife going in, I think, to someone's neck. But then the Dev Patel, who's a kid, by the way, I don't think we ever mentioned, they kind of refer to him as a kid. Yeah, takes it and takes his mouth and kind of like grabs it and twists it type of thing. And it's like just little things like that. It's like, okay, that I like the idea of him being this vengeance filled machine at the end of the film. But it just when it almost got gleefully over the top, I felt like that was a betrayal of the character that we've kind of grown to appreciate the last hour and a half,
Fair enough.
So I just think it had just some moments where it just went a little extreme and it didn't need to, and it actually kind of betrayed the film a bit to do that and what the messaging of the film was as well. So
I think an example of perfect casting. I was not aware that he was in this film. I think you know where I'm going.
Oh, yeah.
Sharlto Copley as the ringmaster of the kind of underground fighting thing. I was like, whoa. And I immediately recognized him. I was like, okay. And he, I think they'd worked on Chappie, together, possibly. So, because I think Copley was in that film. I know.
I think he did the voice, right?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
no, or maybe no, maybe it wasn't.
Maybe. I'm not sure. But I was surprised to see him in the film, and it was kind of cool because it was just a cameo performance. He wasn't in a whole lot of the film, but it was kind of a standout and somebody I recognized, but yet he wasn't overly distracting. So I thought that was.
He was the voice of Chappie.
He was the voice of Chappie. Okay,
yeah, right. No, he was really good. I thought I could have used some subtitles there as well a few times.
Okay,
and again,
because he has I think he's South African or whatever.
Yeah,
so he has
it was a thick accent in the film. I probably layered on a little bit heavier.
And I think, okay, sometimes the Indian speakers that were speaking English. It was so heavy. I was like, like I said, just subtitle it.
Yeah.
I am willing to read subtitles, but I understand the financial decision to not do it. But yeah, I think subtitles just throughout.
Well, I think the thing you got to remember is there's a lot of movie theaters. If you're a studio head or you're putting out these films, there's a lot of movie theaters don't always have the best sound system, or the sound system's not always
True.
best. I feel that way about the theater I was in last night. Again, I'm questioning so much about the screening I went to.
I know.
Because I had such a hard time with even hearing the dialogue
Okay.
or making it out. And I just initially thought it was because of the accents, and it was just hard for me to kind of decipher. But
sounds like you had a little bit more of a hurdle there.
I think there were a lot more going on with the screening.
Yeah.
But regardless, I don't see why, if you know that there are some heavy use of accents, even if they're speaking English language,
Sure.
making it to where if people did need them to be able to kind of help make sure they knew what was going on, I don't have any problem with that. I think that's probably a good move in
Yeah.
a lot of cases. So,
Yeah.
because I personally would rather always see people speak their native language on film.
Sure.
I don't like it when they force people to speak English, and when we have subtitles we could use to understand what they're saying, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I'd
Right.
rather that. So, okay. Well, Monkey Man, I'll say ultimately, look, I will say this. I think there's potential with Dev Patel.
Oh, sure.
From a director and movie making standpoint, he's obviously got some talent. There is some good use of directorial choices in this film, and I think it's nice to see him take this on as his first project, something he has a little bit of passion for. I think it shows in the film, and to go after something so genre specific like this, that typically if you see actors that go and say they're going to make their first film, they normally don't go this route with like a
This is true.
heavy, relentless action, violent film with a socio-political message to it. That's not a first choice for a lot of people.
Everybody's been kind of comparing, which understandably, you and I did, John Wick, but smash that with like Slumdog Millionaire. And in a way, that's kind of what
a
they're
little
doing.
bit what you're talking about
Yeah.
here. So, so there's definitely potential here. I think this film it was too flawed in its execution for me to be able to give it a recommendation. So
Sure. I'm there with you. I'm excited though, because it seems like many people have gone Monkey Poo over Monkey Man. And
by saying Monkey Poo, that's good. Like they like Monkey
right.
Man, or okay.
There's a phrase that is like ape excrement.
Oh,
People
I
say.
see. I
So
see.
I was trying to be. I was trying to be more PG.
You were doing the PG
Right.
version of.
So people have
got
gone
it.
Monkey Poo over Monkey Man.
I got it.
And
Got it.
I was underwhelmed, but I think it sounds like you and I both found the ambition displayed on screen admirable. And we was like, okay, it's good that he made it, and we're looking. I'll be interested to see what he does next.
I'll just say this: the next time I hear, "Hey, Dev Patel is directing a film," I'm going to be curious and interested in seeing what it is.
Sure.
I just hope it's not. I just hope it's not this again. I mean, It's just again, God, so many factors played against me on this, Chris.
I understand.
This is not my type of movie
Sure.
that I typically enjoy or appreciate. I'm watching it on what seems to be a suboptimal viewing experience. And then I'm also not good with really over the top
horror
extreme violence on body parts and all that.
Sure.
There's a lot of that here.
Sure.
So yeah,
Understood.
it was a bad mix for me, but I
But it sounds like you and I both got out of it, his directorial debut, and we're saying, okay, he's if he continues to try to direct, he's going to do, we think, interesting things.
I think so too. Absolutely. So that is Monkey Man. It started in theaters April 5th, so it is still playing right now. Did okay in the box office. I mean, it was number 2 in the box office.
And for a passion project. And
with a hard R movie. Dev Patel is the only star in it, really.
Right.
And I wouldn't say he is top box office magic for anything either. So it made $10 million, which against a pretty low budget, I think also in the $10 to $20 million budget. So, I mean, it's going to be okay. There were already like things kicking around, people asking Dev Patel if there was going to be a sequel to this and all that. So I kind of hope not. I'm like, just make something different. You got your story. You're good. So, okay. That is Monkey Man. Let's move on to some news items after the break. So we're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, a news item, and a couple trailers to share. That's what we're going to do. So stay tuned. You're listening to Foot Candle Films here on themesh.tv.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Welcome back to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. Alan Jackson, Chris Fry with you. Having gone through our review of Monkey Man in the first half of the show, we are now going to talk about some new projects, things coming up in the coming months or possibly year as we get into these. Chris, I do have one news item, like a news story, not really anything audibly or visually I can show with it necessarily, except there are photographs, but I know that's not going to help our podcast audience listeners. But then we will have two trailers.
Just describe the
I'll describe
photographs
them
in painful detail.
I will go
I think that would
pixel
go
by
well.
pixel describing.
Nice.
And then we are going to play two trailers of films that we know are coming up soon that we just want to kind of learn a little bit more about and see if we're interested or not. So first up with the news item, Chris. Christian Bale. You are familiar with him.
Yes.
What was the last film we saw Christian Bale in?
I don't know if we discussed it here on the show, but it was on Netflix, something The Blue Eye or something.
We did
like
not
that.
discuss that.
That was the last thing I saw him in. It's like
Theatrically-
an Edgar Allan Poe,
right.
mystery type thing.
Was it Amsterdam? Was the last theatrical?
Maybe. And that's definitely the last thing we discussed on the show that had Christian Bale in it. I'm
I
pretty
think that
sure.
might be it. I think that's it. Okay.
That was the David O. Russell film, right?
right. Correct. Yes. So
Taylor Swift.
That's right. Briefly.
Briefly.
So Maggie Gyllenhaal, who is, has an actress in her own right. I think Secretary is a film she was known for many years ago.
She made her directorial debut with The
Lost Daughter,
Right.
which starred Jesse Buckley and Olivia Colman.
Right.
Correct? Mm-hmm. I didn't see it, so I'm asking as a
Yes, that
correct.
is true.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So she is working on her second feature film, and it does star Mr. Christian Bale.
Okay.
You know anything about this?
I do not. Is she adapting another book? Because The Lost Daughter was a book that I'd never heard of that she adapted for the screenplay. So is she writing it or is she adapting it, or do we know?
Well, it's definitely a form of an adaptation because it is a story we're all familiar with.
Donkey Kong. Yeah. And he's playing Mario that goes after Donkey Kong.
No. Christian Bale's way too much of a method actor. He's playing the gorilla.
Oh,
so he's
fair
playing
enough.
Donkey Kong.
That is awesome. I'm glad to know that she's adapting video games now for her second film. That'd be
Right. No, actually, a couple steps up from that. She is directing a film called The Bride, which is about Frankenstein and the bride. Huh. Right.
okay. So Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah. Played by Christian Bale.
Okay, so he is playing
Christian Bale is playing Frankenstein's monster.
Okay.
And Jesse Buckley is playing the bride.
Okay.
All right.
So we're assuming it's kind of like a take on Bride of Frankenstein.
So the description, according
Okay.
to Variety, is that the bride is set in 1930 Chicago, puts a spin on the iconic Frankenstein lore.
Okay.
Buckley's murdered young woman is revived, but her new life surprises her creators as she lusts for romance and ignites a radical social movement. So both a change in time period, a change in location, and has a different storyline to follow here. But we do have Christian Bale, and a photo has been released of him as Frankenstein's monster.
Okay.
And we have a photo of Jesse Buckley as the bride. So it's going to be interesting, I think.
And interesting on the heels of Poor Things.
Yeah, because right away in that description even were some very similar
Granted,
tones.
Poor Things, more of a comedy, but very dark and unusual thing. Whereas this one, I don't know. I don't know the tone that she would be going for. I wouldn't imagine a comedy, but different.
Hard to say until we start to see a trailer in the future. But yeah, the film is also going to be starring Penelope Cruz,
Okay.
Peter Sarsgaard, and Annette Bening.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the cinematographer is going to be Lawrence Sher, who is also the Joker cinematographer. So if that again, it's all painting a picture, I think, of a type of tone that this film may be going for. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm curious. Like, I love my Universal monsters stories just as much as I love my giant fighting creatures destroying cities. But just like those, I feel like this has been an area where Hollywood hasn't really succeeded in kind of adapting some of these stories or doing something interesting with these stories. So when I hear a unique take with a possible different slant storyline, but you're trying to adapt these characters in something different, I'm always for it.
It's
So,
just got the title, at least as of right now, is just The Bride.
The Bride.
See, when you
And-
first said The Bride, I was thinking it was something like Quentin Tarantino, because that was the character that Kill Bill was like a graphic novel or whatever called The Bride. So I thought that's what it, but
All right.
nothing to do with that.
So this just in.
Okay.
I'm doing some sleuthing and some detective research right here on the fly.
Nice.
This might be a key. So in this Variety article, which is announcing that this film is happening, I mean,
Yes.
it's been announced for several months, but this is the first time we've seen like photos and like more specifics released.
Gotcha.
The film is referred to as, quote, The Bride. However, in the last line of this Variety article where it says Warner Brothers is set to release Gyllenhaal's The Bride, in this version of the title, The Bride has an exclamation point at the end. The Bride.
Right.
Which to me denotes it's going to be maybe a little more satirical, maybe a little more, have a little bit more of might have more of a humorous touch. I don't know. Now that could be a typo on the Variety because the rest of the times they refer to the bride in the story, has no exclamation
Bride.
point.
Okay.
But if you put that exclamation point at the end, that's critical to me. That changes the tone of the film right away. It is coming out October 2nd, 2025. So we're
Okay. Still a ways out.
a year and a half away. I think they've just started filming like in the last little bit. Yeah, I'll show you, Chris, the photo. I know nobody else can see. Sorry about that.
You know.
So this is Christian Bale as Frankenstein's monster.
Okay.
And then down here we have
Interesting.
Jesse Buckley as the bride.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys go check out Variety's
And then with
article
those
on
photos,
this.
it seems like they could be going either way.
It
doesn't-
It's very hard to tell
Right.
what the tone-
Satirical or maybe gritty realism. Don't know.
Exactly. Don't know yet.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, Gyllenhaal's The Bride, I guess, isn't the only Frankenstein movie that's being made.
Really?
Del Toro is currently filming his own Frankenstein movie. And it's going to be starring Jacob Elordi, which is from Saltburn.
Yeah. And he was also in Priscilla.
That's right.
Who did,
He'll
Elvis
be
in there.
playing the monster. Del Toro's film is backed by Netflix and features Oscar Isaac, Mia Goth, Lars Mikkelsen, Charles Dance, and Christoph Waltz. So, wow. Don't know anything dates-wise or anything like that. But you know, when a good idea flows through Hollywood, it tends to happen in multiple places and multiple projects. So
Right.
that seems to be the rage right now is let's do some Frankenstein movies. And,
Well, and you know, Del Toro's take on Pinocchio was definitely unique and very Del Toro.
I'm all
So-
on board with Del Toro's Frankenstein. No, that to me, I mean, he knows how to work. If they go more of the original storyline, it's like the gothic feel of it.
I'm assuming Waltz is going to be Frankenstein. I mean, not Frankenstein's monster, but Frankenstein. And
I don't
Lordy,
know,
you
or
said-
Oscar Isaac. I
Or-
don't know.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. We'll definitely be
Interesting.
curious to see. Anyway, so The Bride is coming out in October of 2025. Still a ways off, but just wanted to kind of bring that up.
I hope it is The Bride.
I kind of do tell, and now I want to actually, you know what? I need to look on IMDb. Let me do that
See
really
how
quick.
they have it
while we're-
registered.
I want to see how the film is listed officially on the Internet Movie Record of
And I will say, just from a snobby lover of movies, so I do love movies, obviously. That's why we do the podcast. I wish they were a little more spaced out. So my immediately thought wouldn't be, oh, The Bride is just like Poor Things. Like, I wish it wasn't so close on the heels of Poor Things. And I wish Del Toro's Netflix thing wasn't going to be possibly so close on the heels of The Bride, because then in my mind, I can't help but compare them and say like, oh, or pit them against each other. And I hate doing that, but it's just natural. So what does IMDb
but-
say?
Well, it's unclear as well.
Okay.
It is listed as just The Bride, no exclamation point. However, they reference an article in the IMDb listed related news about cast and story and everything we know about the Bride of Frankenstein remake, and it's referenced as The Bride with an exclamation point.
Nice.
So I don't know. I don't know which it's going to be. But IMDb has the film listed in its synopsis and its kind of categories of film as drama, horror, romance. Doesn't mention comedy, doesn't
Okay.
mention satire. So it may still be going a more serious route. So anyway, I definitely get the sense of a romance that they're trying
What if
to
it's
play
like
up more of that angle.
it's like a Frankenstein, Romeo and Juliet?
I don't know.
Could be interesting.
Very interesting. Okay. Enough on The Bride. Let's move on.
you
Chris, there was a trailer that you brought to our attention. I have not seen yet.
Okay.
For a new film. The film is called Janet Planet. Do you got anything to say about this before we see the trailer, or just want to jump into
I
that?
know very little about it, but I did watch the trailer and thought it looked good. It seems like it's kind of a interesting coming of age story, probably heartwarming. But yeah, let's give a listen to the trailer.
All right, this is it's starring Julianne Nicholson and written and directed by Annie Baker, which we'll kind of follow up on that here in a minute. But let's go ahead and watch the trailer for Janet Planet.
Can I hold your hand?
It's kind of hard for me to fall asleep when we're holding hands.
How about for a minute? You know what's funny?
What?
Every moment of my life is hell.
You actually seem very happy to me a lot of the time.
It's hell. I don't think it'll last, though.
I'm actually pretty unhappy too.
All right. I mean, it looks perfectly fine. Again, it's one of those trailers where it's going to be hard for me to say whether this film works or not. It's a film perfectly made for a trailer,
Absolutely.
and it's just it's still going to be
The kid has a
Right.
couple of funny lines.
Yes.
Looks charming. The mom is able to kind of be the straight mom, like kind of like play. But yeah, the trailer definitely works. I'm interested in it. It says it's kind of a unique coming of age thing, and I don't know. It kind of has like a Little Miss Sunshine kind of vibe, except it's a little maybe not as outright
serious,
outlandish. I will say that the person playing the mom, is that Annie Baker or is that the director who's Annie Baker?
No. Julianne Nicholson is the star. She plays the
Julianne,
mother.
okay, so the
Yeah.
mother's okay. Annie Baker's the filmmaker,
Yeah.
and then Julianne. Okay, so Julianne Nicholson, like I can see this possibly being like, okay, like I didn't even know her name, and now I could be like, okay, yeah, this may be a star-making turn for her.
Well, what was the
possibly?
film last year that lead actress was nominated for? And it was very much a similar toned film. It was like a kind of a self-destructive woman who she got nominated for Best Actress. Like not this most recent, but the year before.
Oh, you're talking about To Leslie.
Yes, exactly. A little bit of that same kind of vibe feel to it, where it's going to explore a woman and kind of her own possible personal failings and how she feels about herself and affects other people. But this has got also a daughter involved, which
Which
yeah.
the daughter to me, like, she's it has like the very much like the little kid from Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
It's like that because it's a cute kid that has the ability to kind of do a flat delivery that makes it that much funnier. But I don't know, it could be kind of a breakout thing for the little kid.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, it's a perfectly made trailer.
Sure.
It hits all the parts it's need to make a good, effective trailer. But it's going to just come down to, like with these films, is the proof in the pudding. Does it work?
Sure.
When it actually hits the screen.
People would kind of refer to this, I imagine, as like a Sundancey film. And like, this I could see that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So written and directed by Annie Baker. I'm not familiar with Annie Baker as a writer or director.
Me neither.
Not sure if you are or not.
I am not.
So we'll have to kind of keep an eye out for that one. Looks interesting.
Yeah.
Looks like it could be a good one to check out. That is coming out June 21st.
Okay.
So don't think it'll be a wide release film. Not going to picture that in the middle of the summer going out to all the Blockbuster.
Probably
But
not.
so maybe one you have to go to kind of a specialty house to see.
Sure.
In June. But we will definitely keep our eyes out for that one. Okay. Let's change gears with our second trailer, Chris. And I'll go ahead and cop up that I have not seen the two films preceding this one in the series of films that this has become a part of.
Okay.
But director Ty West, has worked on a trilogy he calls his X trilogy. And he had two films beforehand. One was called X, and then one was called Pearl. Both of them coming out in 2022.
Right.
Now we have the third one in this horror series. We're going horror again, so I didn't know we were going to do that, but that's fine. This will be concluding his horror series coming out July 5th. It is called Maxine, but the X in Maxine is a giant capital triple X. Mm-hmm. So if you know where that's going.
Yes.
It stars Mia Goth, who was also in the previous two films, I take it. Again,
yes.
Did not see them, but I'm assuming from Chris's nodding that that's correct. And this film also stars Kevin Bacon, Bobby Cannavale, Elizabeth Debicki, Lily Collins, and Giancarlo Esposito, who I really like. So,
yeah.
The synopsis from the film is that in 1980s Hollywood, adult film star and aspiring actress Maxine Minks finally gets her big break. But as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. So, the
sinister past of the killer. Not are they saying the killer
is
a her?
Her sinister past.
Okay, Maxine sinister.
But as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her, I believe, Maxine's sinister past.
Okay.
It's making it sound like there might be somebody else who's doing some killing, but in doing so, it might be giving away some of the knowledge about her own past.
Okay.
Again,
interesting.
I've not seen these other films.
Sure.
I am relying solely on what Variety has given me in a quick little write-up here. So,
And we have a trailer.
we do have a trailer.
Okay, so before we show the trailer, let me give a little primer for
Okay.
you, Alan.
Yes,
and our
sure.
listeners, I'm assuming if you're even vaguely interested in this, you've seen the other two films. So X did come out first, but X was basically the story of a bunch of people who went to a farmhouse and were set to make like a indie porno film. And she was an aspiring actress. She was there. Things went wrong. Lots of people died. Okay. I liked it. It was interesting. It was an interesting take on doing like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre type thing. I liked it.
Okay.
Pearl, which came out second, same year as you were saying, was technically a prequel.
Right.
And you learned the people whose farmhouse they rent or whatever. You learn kind of the background of some of the characters of the people that own the farmhouse, or specifically Pearl. And it had this like Wizard of Oz color palette they were going for. It was just this really weird, which I admired, going weird. But to me, overall, it just wasn't effective.
Okay.
However, I will say a lot of people commented and gave her credit, Mia Goth, for this speech, basically like a monologue that she does staring at the camera. She plays Pearl in this prequel, which is kind of odd because she played Maxine, obviously, in X. But anyways, she gives kind of a monologue to the camera and goes through all these like mood shifts, and it is pretty incredible. A lot of people are actually saying like she should have been nominated for a horror movie, probably not, but like they were that impressed with that performance. So bring forward to this movie where and they kind of teased that, it was going to be a trilogy and that this was going to follow her to Hollywood as she continues to try to be a star. So,
Well, it looks like that's where we are then. So
Cool.
let's take a look at the trailer for Maxine.
So, Maxine. Your agent tells us you're quite a popular name in adult film and entertainment. Is that correct? I'm curious, did you always want to be in that line of work?
I always wanted to be famous.
If you need to read off the sides we gave you, just go ahead, all right?
I know the lines.
She turns to the camera and, through her trauma, addresses the lens directly.
Okay. So that is the trailer for Maxine, which is, again, the X in the middle, triple X, all caps. So, Chris, I don't feel like I can really, the trailer, this movie looks,
and I saw your
looks good.
eyebrows raise at one particular point. You're like, whoop. It showed a kind of a backlot area.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And you were like, do what?
Yeah, that was,
Okay.
the film looked really interesting.
Yep.
I'm very curious about it. But again, I want to hear from your perspective, having seen the other two. Is this,
So I really liked X. even though I didn't, horror movies aren't normally my jam, but I really liked X. Pearl was a letdown for me. I was disappointed. Thought it had potential, but was disappointed. I think I'm going to be a fan of Maxine. I actually was not excited when I heard there was going to be a third film. Like, I'm just kind of done with it. But the scenes that it shows with kind of Hollywood backlots and how it's self-aware and name drops like stars and all this kind of stuff. It's like, okay. And the whole, that's why I was trying to clarify from what you said in the beginning. Okay. Are they alluding to her past or the killer's past? But yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know. There's a lot of ambiguity there. The trailer kind of hints at the same thing, but yeah, it looks like there's a lot going on, but it's also a lot going on kind of poking fun at Hollywood or I don't know. I'm interested in it. So yeah.
No, I'm on board now. So I think that looks good.
Will you see the other two?
I might actually. I've become more kind of curious about this series in general, and I like what looks like they're doing with this third one. So yeah, and I'm not going to go into it not watching the other one. So I
would say you at least need to watch Max or X. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Well, this is a film that is coming out, let's see here, very, very soon.
Really? They're not going to let it come out later towards Halloween? That's always...
July 5th.
Wow. Right.
Why not? Just a couple months away. So.
Interesting.
Yeah. July 5th, this will be coming out. That is the film Maxine. Color us intrigued.
Yeah.
So I think that will be good. All right. So, Chris, that wraps us up for today. So we talked about The Bride, or The Bride, depending on which news article you read about this. We watched the trailer for Janet Planet coming out. I think that was in July also.
I think
June.
so.
Yeah. And then Maxine coming out definitely in July. So we talked about that as well as, of course, our initial review of Monkey Man. Wish I could say we were more positive on it, but we definitely see potential.
Absolutely.
And still want to see what Mr. Dev Patel wants to work on next. We're interested, but this film just didn't quite work for either of us as well. So, Chris, if anybody wants to follow up with us on anything we're talking about here today, how can they do that?
You can send an email to info@footcandle.org. You can follow us on Twitter @FootCandleFilm. Facebook, we're simply Foot Candle Film Society. Instagram and Threads, Foot Candle Film. Al and I are also on Letterboxd, where we try to track what we're seeing and leave quick takes. Do us a favor, give us a star rating, write a review, share with friends on whatever service you receive your favorite podcast on, because it'll help us reach new listeners. We'd appreciate it. As I kind of alluded to at the beginning of the show, Foot Candle Film Festival, very important to us. I mean, you can probably guess from the name of the podcast, but it's going to be September 20th through the 28th. Consider coming to Western North Carolina during this time and check us out. It's going to be our 10th annual film festival. We think it'll be a good one.
Yeah, great. Well, we are definitely looking forward to that festival coming up this fall. And we will be back next week with another episode with another movie review. I think we're planning on reviewing, what was the film?
Civil War.
Oh, right. Civil War. Civil War coming out this weekend. We will be discussing that on our next week's episode. So we'll look forward to that, as well as any other news or trailers that have come up in the meantime, or if Chris decides that he wants to grace us again with one of his recommendations. We will wait and see what happens next week. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll look forward to talking to you next time. Take care.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.